You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
So welcome, everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It is Thursday, March 6th, 2025, 7:38 p.m. Pacific time. And I thought tonight that I would talk about kids, children, and how do you raise children to be secure, even if you're not secure or weren't raised secure and haven't done the deep work of uh, uprooting your native attachment strategy if it's insecure, disorganized, and still manage to um, raise secure kids. Um, it's an interesting thing. I was talking to Mary Main about the work that we typically do with people and taking them from insecure and disorganized to earn secure. And she said her interests were not so much in that, but that they were in how do we intervene for kids of people who are insecure and disorganized so that the kids grow up to be secure. And that how wonderful it would be if there were some programs where you could learn the skills of secure functioning in such a way that you could transmit to that to your children instead of your native attachment strategy. You know, we all have an 85% chance of inheriting the attachment strategy of our primary caregiver. And it's transgenerationally stable, this transmission. We have a 70% chance of having the same attachment strategy as our great grandmother. So 4 generations, and because women are largely the caregivers for children, tend to inherit through that transmission. She was talking about a program where um, people come into the household and teach the parents how to relate to their children in such a way that they produce security in their children, and that it actually took 12 interventions in order for that to happen. So it seems like it's something that could be done quite widely if we as a society decided that was something to do. And certainly having a counselor come into a household and teach parenting skills 12 times is cheaper than incarcerating people for decades. But who am I? So then what is it the things that the child needs in order to grow up in a secure way? Remember that security means that you meet the needs of a child 30% of the time or better, so an astonishingly low bar. So we look at that. What is it that happens? The child is entirely dependent on the care of the caregiver. And actually, the whole process of developing a sense of self, a working model of self, and a working model of the world, other people, comes from the dyadic experience of care from the caregiver. There you are, this little bumble of joy, to use Edward Albee's description, in that dyadic relationship where you're just expressing yourself without so much of a hint of self-awareness, just that automatic expression of life. And then hopefully you have a sensitively enough attuned caregiver who then connects to you empathetically, understands what the experiences that you're having, mirrors that back to you so that you can begin to associate the reaction of somebody else to your internal state, and then to provide care in response to your expression so that you can begin to associate an expression for a care received. That's that cycle. and that the caregiver is sensitively attuned enough that 30% of the time or better, you get the care that you need, and you don't worry about whether or not that care is going to be available to you or not. That is to say, you have responsive enough caregivers. Well, that sounds like a fairly straightforward and simple description. All you have to do is have a sensitively attuned caregiver who gets it right 30% of the time. But that also means they need to pay attention to you 30% of the time or more. And so when we begin to look at the different attachment strategies, dismissing people, of course, are profoundly neglected in childhood. So they don't have that understanding that you have to pay attention to the child. You have to be responsive to what the child's needs are. And in preoccupied household or family systems where the child learns preoccupation as a way of connecting, there's a chaos that's in that attention. And so often the child's experience is getting lost in that chaotic attention. And then in disorganized households, there's a threat or a sense of danger that the child experiences. This can be either because the caregiver is unpredictable and erratic and dangerous, or simply depressed and unavailable or unresponsive. The child has trouble understanding what the change in the mind states are. Or if there are substances involved where the expression of the caregiver changes radically without much explanation that the child can relate to. So you make a decision to take care of the child in the way that the child needs to be taken care of. And you make a decision not to rely on the child to take care of the things that you need from them or from relationships. It's easy to role reverse a child where actually the child is then in service to the needs that the caregiver has rather than the caregiver in service to the child's needs. One of the other things that tends to come up is the reliability of, the basics: food, clothing, shelter, medicine, those things. So there's a high correlation to security in resourced family systems and a much lower sense of that in family systems that are not so well resourced. So you're the caregiver and you make the decision that you're going to take care of the child in a way that the child needs to be taken care of. But that also means that you have some capacity to regulate your own emotions and to regulate the environment in such a way that you can keep it within the intensity that a child can manage. Children don't have a wide range of intensities that they can manage. So how do you keep the environment low key enough for a child, safe enough for a child? That means that you have to interact with the world in a way that then will provide that for you. So part of this is actually the caregiver taking care of the caregiver and such, taking care of themselves, and also if there's other people involved in the care of the child, keeping that steadiness, that reliability piece. A short way of thinking about this is that if you are meeting the needs of a child, when they need to be picked up, you pick them up. And when they need to be put down, you put them down. One of the things you'll notice, I think, if you're out and about in the world, is this divided attention, particularly with devices. A child is demanding attention, but the caregiver is caught up in the device, and too long of a gap goes by between the child's request and the attention of the caregiver. So when I say when the child needs to be picked up, you pick them up. There's not a lot of space between the signal from the child needing to be picked up and you picking them up. It has to be almost immediate for it to be effective. And then when the child is ready to be put down, you put the child down. And this can go back and forth, picking up, putting down, picking up, putting down, just that basic sensitivity to the needs of the child. As the child develops, one of the things that also has to happen is the sensitivity to the skills or the capacities of the child as they come online, and moving the goalpost out so that the child is challenged, and it helps them to develop their skill set, but not so much so that they can't reach the goal. So you move the goal out, but you move it within range. So it's a stretch for the child to meet the goal, but not so far out that the child can't reach the goal, which has a self-defeating quality to it, an incompetence to it. The child has a sense of being incompetent because they can't reach the goal, whereas if you put the goal within reach, but there's a stretch, then and they reach it, then they have a sense of confidence that they can take on challenging things and reach them. And children develop at different rates, so you have to be sensitive to it. You have to know what it is in order to be able to do that. So you have to be educated around child rearing and not simply relax into the way that the family system has unfolded. Another way to talk about this is that you take on the care of the child in the way that the child needs to be taken care of. This is different from an adult relationship. There's a second piece to that in adult relationships. You agree to take on the care of the caregiver. Sorry, you agree to take on the care of your partner. This could be any kind of relationship, really, and they agree to take on your care in this global sense, which is collaborative. Um, in transactional relationships, of course, each expression of care is negotiated as a trade for something else, whatever it is that the exchange is. And in collaborative relationships, it's a global setting. You agree to take on the care of the other person, and then they instruct you in a way what that care is and how you should be doing it. And then you take it up as something that you do. And they learn about you and the things that you need to feel taken care of, and you then take care of them. And this is also true of children. You look for the ways that they need to be taken care of so that you can take care of them and they can understand the meaning of that, which translates into a sense of them being of value, them being important. They can see it as an expression of love, which is essential. But we should also talk about the difference between love and care for children. A child can grow up in a home where the care is good, but it's not particularly loving and still end up with secure attachment. But it's unlikely that a child could grow up in a loving home, even a very loving home, where the care was wrong and develop a sense of security in that. So there is that sense of knowing who the child is and knowing what matters to the child and what they want and providing that for them. Yes, children, even children have the idea of what they like to do and what they don't like to do. And sometimes parents can be quite directive about what it is that they think is useful for the child to do and not, uh, um, and what is not useful for the child to do. And they can be quite restrictive in terms of what they allow the child to do. But this doesn't preclude that some things are actually good for children that they might not like to do, that you then provide for them. For instance, playing a musical instrument is important for a child to develop capacities for advanced thinking, and that without that, it's harder for them to do that. And then to provide an education. We have quite different views of that in the world. In Japanese society, the first few years of school are really just about learning manners so that you're able to operate in the society the way that they do. Um, and it can get quite competitive. We have had in the past pretty good public schooling system in this country. It has been deprioritized really in the last 40 or 50 years and continues to decline. So that an increasing percentage of the population doesn't really have access to education. So we're limiting the capacity of the child to grow to their full potential. I call it the great squandering of talent that we engage in. But if you have resources, you can provide that for your child. It's if you don't, that it becomes more challenging. Can you provide an environment that's steady? And can you sensitively attune to your child and um, pay attention to their expressions so that you can begin to decode them and understand the kind of expressions that they're making? And then can you provide for them the things that they need so that they can thrive? And can you do it in such a way that it's reliable enough that they don't worry about whether it's available to them or not? That's essentially the formula for raising a child securely. And then the absence of those things are what leads to the other attachment outcomes. Profound neglect is the thing that organizes someone in an avoidant way to grow up to be dismissing. Chaos and misattunement is the thing that causes kids to grow up to be preoccupied, and some perception of danger for the child, so that the child is frightened of the caregiver, is the thing that leads to disorganization and attachment. Then you end up in the category that was less interesting to Mary Main, which was the correcting of the attachment outcome in adults. What's the reason that you have children? What do you think about that? Is that because some people do like to have children and some people don't like to have children, and it's increasingly a larger group of people who don't like to have children. And I think that that's also related to the sense of the reliability of the times that we're in. A friend of mine was teaching drama or teaching acting in the high school where kids go, and she asked everybody what it is that they plan to do with their lives once they got out of high school, and was quite surprised that nobody suggested that they wanted to get married and have a family. And so she asked quite specifically whether anyone was planning to have children. And in the entire class, not a single person was planning to have children. And so it speaks to the challenge of the time. But that sense of meaningfulness is often what comes up. How do you make your life meaningful? So this is an exploration question. In secure family systems, the development of the skills and the interests of things that are meaningful have resources enough that you can actually begin to pursue those. And so over the course of a lifetime, you're able to distill down what is meaningful to you, what you're actually good at, and how you can derive meaning from that. And so you organize your life in a way toward that. In disorganized family systems and in insecure family systems, where there's an impingement on people's capacity to explore, it often leads them in a place where they don't have adequate meaning in their life. And so they look for solutions for meaning. They look for something to do that would obligate them in a way. One of the things about adult exploration, particularly primary exploration, is if you are frightened to do it or you don't know what to do because you're the restrictions in your own capacity to explore have limited your ability to do it. We're always looking for reasons that we could use to justify why we don't explore it, that we could let ourselves off the hook for exploration. And often children are that um, excuse in a way. You have children, and the obligations for care for the children don't leave a lot of time, energy, or resources to pursue primary exploration. But you can feel satisfied. You can feel a kind of self-justification in doing that. But if you do that, you're also obligating your child to provide meaning for you in that primary sense. And often people can have kids and get caught up in the care of them and abandon their own pursuits, their own pursuit of meaning, and then feel a sense of resentment for the children because they don't actually provide that for them. Mudit?
I also realized that if you tell an insecure person that the exploration is missing, for them, that doesn't sound right. Because to them, it's the, maybe it could be, for example, the closeness with somebody that will give them meaning.
Right.
It's almost like they have to go through that themselves to realize, oh, the person will not give me anything, but the belief is really strong that another person will make them feel better.
Yes, we do have, and there is a lot of uh, um, descriptions of that. But the problem is, I think, over and over again, that people find that the relationships don't provide the meaning. And so what they think is that there's a problem with the relationship because it's not providing the meaning. But the relationship may not be problematic in that way. It's just that meaning doesn't come from relationships in that way. The relationships are supposed to support you so that you can explore and find meaning. But they don't really provide the meaning in of themselves. And I think that this might even be an unusual development in uh, uh, civilization. 120 years ago, uh, when there was so much labor involved in getting anything to happen, that we were all much more engaged in just the basic secondary exploration, keeping the household together. And technology has really, in some ways, freed us up quite a bit. And so we've developed all of these distracting technologies as well. All of the material, the glut of information that comes through the screens that we all have around us, to take up that slack rather than being engaged in more meaningful things. And the other problem, of course, is we live in human bodies which have these physical capabilities. we require rest, we require energy, all of that.
Yeah, I realize that the need. How do you tell people if because of their need for, because the emotion from the relationship could be regulating for them before they explore, right? So they do need the person to explore. What do you tell
Right.
people in that situation? Is not is to first explore the relationship, find somebody.
Well, I think of it, if we used a Buddhist metaphor of ground, path, fruition, relationships are really the ground, right? That's what we can stand on. And then that leads us to the path, really, the path that we will find meaning through pursuing. But if we don't set up the ground well enough, it limits our capacity to engage in the path. And the more limited we are in the engagement of the path, the less likely there is fruition. Or another metaphor is the safety net. You can dance on the high wire if you know that there's a safety net in a way that you probably can't if there isn't. If
So
somebody
meeting
will catch
people
you,
is
somebody
what do you
will help.
recommend? Yeah.
Huh?
So meeting people is what do you recommend to everyone who struggles from meaninglessness? Because the 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 loneliness epidemic is really high. That also means that meaning will also be missing in the future generations.
Yes, loneliness is quite a problem, and it gets more difficult as you age. For an interesting reason that I think came out in the Dunbar research, everybody loses a primary relationship every 2.5 years. So you constantly have to be cultivating your social network. When you're younger, the volume of people that you meet is much higher. Hundreds of people you could be meeting in a year. So there's much more choice to hone in on the 2 or 3 people that you need to know. As you get older, you're out of school and out of sports and out of all of those uh, uh, social constructions that children are engaged in. And you get into a job situation which is pretty stable. You get into if you get into a family system, a relational system, pretty stable. The number of people that you meet drops precipitously. And if you're still going to have to replenish close relationships every 2.5 years, you're still going to have to be cultivating people all of the time in order to achieve that. And so you constantly have to be working at putting relationships together so that you can have the few that you need, because the circumstances are that they're going to come and go. And if you don't actively engage in constantly resourcing new relationships, every 2.5 years you lose one. It's easy to run out of them, particularly when you consider that your close group of people is 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people. It doesn't take that long if you don't replenish them to run out. And even if you do have kids and you use them as a source of meaning, they may not appreciate that so much. One of the things I notice in the work that I do is that kids who grew up in households where their epistemic trust is intact, that is to say, they believe that their caregivers thought of them and were interested in them and actually um, told them the truth and also attempted to provide for them in a way that was useful to the child's development. They have no problem maintaining the relationship with the caregivers and continuing that as the caregiver ages. But for kids that feel that they weren't told the truth and that the caregivers did not have their interest in mind and did not help them develop themselves in the way that would have been good for them, they resent having to take care of the caregivers. And it can easily get to the point where they won't do it. And so it isn't also that magic care in your decrepitude that a lot of people wish that it would be. Really, the idea for a child to be secure is to understand that you're interested in them. You think of them, and that they're important, and that you delight in who they are, and you support the development of who they are, even if it's not something that you might be interested in or something that you would do for yourself. That's often the dilemma. We get caught up in this idea that the things that matter to me, the things that are important to me are important, and the things that don't matter to me are then not important. And if you have a child who is growing up and they're interested and talented in things that don't mean anything to you, and you don't allow them to develop those talents, but insist that they develop the things that matter to you, you are actually depriving your child of the care that they need. Even if you're providing a lot of care, it's the wrong care. It doesn't translate in that way for children. Do they feel safe with you? Do they feel that they can tell you what's going on with them? Do they expect you to take their side and help them? So in early childhood, of course, there's early childhood. There is that directing and in some ways controlling and defending of the child because they don't have the capacity to do that. And then when you hit adolescence, the nature of the brain changes, and there's a period of time where the child, the adolescent, wants to attempt to be managing their own lives, but they also want to collapse back into childhood and come rushing back and be taken care of. And so that the forays out and the coming back and the forays out, coming back. And if you don't relax that authority position, that control position a little bit, they begin to not tell you what they're trying to do because you won't allow it, and they feel a need to do it. Or if they don't believe you, the trust is not there, they won't tell you. And really, they need you to switch into the coach-mentor position out of that sort of organizing and controlling position so that you can help them discover the kind of life that they want to have. And if they can use you as a sounding board, and they can use you as a way of understanding experimentation in that period of life, then they have a really solid leg up over people who don't have that, because adolescent brains are not fully cognitive. That doesn't happen really until your mid-20s, and you can make a lot of really bad decisions in that period of life if you don't have somebody helping you, don't have somebody coaching you. And you can make a lot of good decisions if you do have somebody who's helping you. And that's that shift. And then we did.
So I realized in this case, therapists are becoming extremely famous for this. And I realized this is the reason that they are. And I'm wondering, what's your take on a person who sees his or her therapist twice a week, uses the therapist as a sounding board, as somebody, as not a, but somebody as
So
the ground.
in a sense, the caregivers delegate the transition to the therapist in order for the child to use the therapist.
Because people are not meeting people, but therapists you can find easily, and they
Right.
act perfectly as a ground because they don't really.
It's once or twice a week is still not enough, and also uh, it's can't underestimate the need for the child to be valued and loved and delighted in by the caregiver. A therapist is not going to be a substitute for that. they might be able to support a child to move on and to create a life that's more useful to them. But the wound of a caregiver who didn't provide that is still going to be there. So
Therapists cannot take delight in the
well, it depends. Really, you're talking about in the exchange um, between any two people, really, is a kind of play, a kind of exploration. And when you really see somebody and really delight in them, it's fun to play with them, right? And so there's always those kinds of expressions and that back and forth and that kind of challenging that comes up in that, then so that you can be supported or pushed into succeeding. And really, when I say succeeding in being the best version of yourself, whatever that is, we have also that overlay of the culture where some things are valuable in our culture and some things are not. And your particular talents, your particular interests may align with that or not align with that. And how much pressure is there then to abandon the things that you might pursue that would provide a lot of meaning for you that don't have an endorsement from the culture. Um, and then do you, in fact, have the support then to go after them anyway? Because that's the thing that's going to be fulfilling in your life. And be okay with it, that it doesn't provide the same level of remuneration or admiration that other lines of activity might.
sorry, just a last comment. I just realized that delight and love do come from friends, but the support of exploration does not. It's better in the therapist relationship, because support of exploration is very scientific. It's very like,
Well, can you engage people in a way that includes an expression of your exploration? So you go out and find stuff out, and then you come back and you express it in your friend group or your family group. And people are very interested in what you're finding out, and they're enthusiastic and delighted that you discover the things that you need to know, and they're encouraging to take you back out. But that only happens if you're willing to express authentically what it is that you're discovering, and also make space for other people then to be able to express to you what's meaningful to them. Then you become the great boosters for each other, and they can't wait to tell you the thing that they found out, because they know that you're going to react with delight and encourage them to go further, and you can't wait to tell them. So then paying attention as you form these relationships and flow energy into them to people who are actually good at exploring, so that they have something to exchange. One of the things that can easily happen in relationship to people that don't explore very well is that they don't have much to offer in that way, because they don't explore, so they don't have anything to exchange in exploration. And in order for relationships really to take off, it's that synergy between explorations, that they're not so similar that you discover the same things, but they're close enough that the things that you discover are useful to the other person in their exploration, and the things that they discover in their exploration are useful to you in your exploration. Then you can't wait to express it because it's so useful, mutually useful. And this is also true in terms of raising children. Can you understand really what they're good at and what's important to them? And can you push them in that way that is supportive for them to take risks? Because children, don't have all of this stuff developed. They have to develop it. That constantly assessing where they're at, because their capabilities are always changing and always growing, to move that goalpost just within reach and pushing them to stretch to get it really builds this tremendous sense of confidence in a child. Whereas if you move the goalpost too far so that they can't reach it, it becomes defeating for the child. But if you don't move the goalpost, they also don't stretch. And so it tends to limit what they do. Tends to limit their confidence in being able to do things that are difficult. And of course, if you don't learn that as a child, you have to learn it now.
And these are only explorations. These are not stories about your life. Because people love to share stories about their lives, but I'm not sure if that would be the same as exploration.
No, I don't think so. Not quite the same. Trying to think of an easy example. I just finished a book that I've been working on for 5 years, and nobody had read it up until the time that I finished it, but I gave it to 3 people to read. And there's usually a lag period between giving the book out to be read for the first time and your confidence in the book dropping to almost nothing. And then getting an informed response from somebody else. That would be an example of it. And then, of course, if it has a positive effect, then it changes the point of view of the person who has experienced that, which is that exchange of exploration, which I like. What do you say we do a little practice? Loving kindness or heart? Oops. Loving kindness or insight?
We already selected it.
Yes, I'll give you a choice. Loving kindness or metta? Which would you rather?
That's a sign.
All right. So go ahead and take your meditation posture. All right, let go of the meditation. So thanks for your practice. What's coming up is starting on Saturday is a level 1. We're going to be talking a little bit about how it might work with helping professionals. So if that's something that's interesting to you, sign up for it. We'll be beginning a level 2 in April, the 18th, I think it is. I think that's the things that are coming up right away. Anyway, it's all on the website. Take a look. If you have resources and you're able to make a donation for the teaching, that's also appreciated. I offer it freely, but if you can make a donation, it helps support me and also the work that Mettagroup is doing. So we really appreciate it in any amount. And thank you for your practice. I'll see you soon, I hope. Bye.